The day, Zara Daniels stood in the dusty main street of Concord, New Hampshire, and declared she would only marry for true love. Every person within earshot burst into laughter that echoed off the wooden storefronts like gunshots in the summer air of 1876. She stood there with her chin held high, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, her calico dress dusty from working in her father's general store since dawn. At 22 years old, she had already turned down 3 marriage proposals from respectable men, and the town had run out of patience with her romantic notions. Her father, William Daniels, had died 2 months prior from pneumonia, leaving her alone to run the store and fend off the gossip that followed her like a shadow. True love, Mrs. Henderson scoffed from the boardwalk, her ample figure blocking the entrance to the millinery shop. Girl thinks she is living in one of those dime novels she keeps hidden behind the counter. Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she refused to look away. She had made her declaration in response to Thomas Pritchard's very public proposal in front of the entire town during the Sunday social. Thomas was a banker's son, well-dressed and educated, but his eyes held no warmth when he looked at her. He had proposed because she owned property now, because the general store sat on valuable land in the center of town, and because his father thought it would be a good investment. "I would rather die an old maid than marry without love," Zara said clearly, her voice carrying across the street. More laughter followed her as she walked back toward the general store, her boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. She could feel their eyes on her back, could hear the whispers that would fuel gossip for weeks. Let them talk. She had read enough books, heard enough stories from traveling merchants, to know that somewhere in this vast country, there had to be someone who would look at her and see more than a business opportunity. The general store felt empty without her father's presence. He had been a dreamer too, always telling her stories about her mother, who had died bringing Zara into the world. He spoke of love as if it were magic, as if the brief years he had spent with Zara's mother had been worth all the lonely years that followed. Those stories had planted seeds in Zara's heart that no amount of practical advice from the townspeople could uproot. She spent the rest of that Sunday restocking shelves and updating the ledger, trying to ignore the way her hands trembled slightly as she worked. The store needed supplies from Boston, but the freight costs were becoming difficult to manage. She would have to make decisions soon about which items to order and which to let go. The responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders. Monday morning brought the usual customers, along with their barely concealed pity and judgment. Mrs. Patterson came in for flour and salt, her lips pursed in disapproval. "Such a shame about your father. A woman alone should not be running a business. It is not natural." Zara measured out the flour with steady hands. "My father taught me everything about running this store. I am perfectly capable. Capable or not, you need a husband. Thomas Pritchard is a good man from a good family. You embarrassed him yesterday." "I was honest with him." "That is more respectful than accepting a proposal I do not mean." Mrs. Patterson paid for her goods and left with a disapproving shake of her head. The morning continued in much the same way, with customers offering opinions she had not asked for and advice she did not want. By noon, Zara felt exhausted from holding her tongue and maintaining her composure. She was arranging a display of canned goods when the bell above the door chimed. Looking up, she saw a man she did not recognize, and in a town the size of Concord, strangers were notable. He was tall, with broad shoulders that filled his dusty brown coat, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. His hat was pulled low, shading his face, but she could see a strong jaw and the beginning of a smile as he approached the counter. "Afternoon," he said, his voice deep and pleasant. "I am looking for supplies. My horse threw a shoe about 2 miles out and I am going to be in town longer than I planned." Zara moved behind the counter, suddenly aware of how plain she must look in her faded work dress, her hair coming loose from its pins. "What do you need?" He removed his hat, and she got her first clear look at his face. He had warm brown eyes, sun-weathered skin, and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. There was kindness in his expression, but also something else, a sort of quiet strength that made her feel strangely safe. "Grain for my horse, some coffee, dried beef if you have it, and a couple of cans of peaches." He pulled a list from his pocket. "And thread, good strong thread." "Mending to do?" Zara asked, gathering the items. "Always. Life on the trail is hard on clothes." He leaned against the counter, watching her work with an interest that felt different from the way other men looked at her. "You run this place yourself?" "I do. My father passed recently. It was his store." "I am sorry for your loss." The sympathy in his voice sounded genuine, not like the performative condolences she had grown accustomed to receiving. "It must be difficult, running a business alone." "I manage." She set the items on the counter and calculated the total. "That will be $3.40. He counted out the money, his hands rough with calluses but surprisingly graceful. As he handed her the coins, their fingers brushed, and Zara felt an unexpected jolt of awareness that made her pull back quickly. "I did not catch your name," he said. "Zara Daniels." "Mason Vance." He tipped his hat to her. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Daniels. I will probably be around for a few days while the blacksmith fixes my horse's shoe and I wait on some business. I expect I will be seeing you again." After he left, Zara stood behind the counter feeling oddly unsettled. There had been something in the way Mason Vance looked at her, something that made her feel seen in a way she had not experienced before. She shook her head, trying to clear it. He was just a stranger passing through town. She would do well to remember that. But Mason Vance did not pass through town. He appeared at the general store again the next morning, this time asking for shaving soap and a new handkerchief. He lingered at the counter, asking her about the town, about her father, about the books she had stacked in the corner for sale. "You like to read?" he asked, picking up one of the novels. "When I have time, do you?" "My mother taught me when I was young. She believed education was important even for a rancher's son." He opened the book, scanning the pages. "I have not had much opportunity lately. Been working as a trail hand, taking cattle drives up from Texas. You see a lot of country that way, but you do not see many books." They talked for nearly an hour, until other customers came in and demanded Zara's attention. Mason purchased the book and left with a promise to return. He kept that promise. Every day for the next week, Mason found reasons to visit the general store. Sometimes he needed supplies, sometimes he just wanted to talk. Zara found herself looking forward to his visits, found herself taking extra care with her appearance in the mornings, choosing her better dresses and making sure her hair was neatly arranged. On the 8th day of Mason's presence in Concord, Thomas Pritchard entered the store while Mason was there. Thomas's eyes narrowed when he saw the cowboy leaning against the counter, laughing at something Zara had said. "Miss Daniels," Thomas said coldly, "I need to speak with you about a business matter." "I am with a customer, Mr. Pritchard. I can wait." Thomas positioned himself near the door, his posture rigid with disapproval. Mason glanced between them, understanding dawning in his eyes. "I should be going anyway. Thank you for the conversation, Miss Daniels." He paid for his items and left, nodding politely to Thomas as he passed. Once Mason was gone, Thomas approached the counter with barely controlled anger. "You have been spending considerable time with that drifter. He is a customer. He is more than that, and everyone in town can see it. You are making a fool of yourself, Zara. That man is nobody, just a trail hand with no prospects and no future. Yet you turned down my proposal for him. I did not turn down your proposal for anyone. I turned it down because I do not love you, Thomas. I do not think I even like you very much. His face reddened. You are being childish. Love is a fairy tale. Marriage is a practical arrangement between suitable people. Then go find someone suitable who shares your views. I am not interested. Thomas slammed his hand on the counter. Your father would be ashamed of you. He built this business to secure your future, and you are throwing it away on romantic nonsense. When that cowboy leaves town, and he will leave, you will be alone with nothing but your pride and your books. After Thomas stormed out, Zara found herself shaking, not from fear but from anger and something else, a deep sadness that the town she had grown up in could not understand what she wanted, what she needed. She closed the store early that day, unable to face any more customers or their judgments. That evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, someone knocked on the door of her living quarters above the store. Zara opened it to find Mason standing there, hat in hand, looking uncertain. I hope I am not being too forward, he said. But I wanted to make sure you were all right. I saw Pritchard leave looking angry and you closed the store early. Zara stepped aside to let him in. It was improper, having a man in her private rooms, but she found she did not care. Would you like some coffee? That would be nice. She poured them both cups from the pot on her stove, and they sat at her small kitchen table. Through the window, they could see the main street of Concord settling into evening quiet. Thomas Pritchard thinks I am a fool, Zara said quietly. The whole town thinks I am a fool. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am chasing something that does not exist. Mason took a sip of his coffee before responding. What are you chasing? True love. The kind my father had with my mother, even though it was brief. The kind I have read about in books and heard about in stories. Everyone laughs at me for wanting it. They say I am being childish and impractical. I do not think you are a fool. Mason's brown eyes were serious. I think you are brave. Most people settle for less than what they want because they are afraid. You refuse to do that. But what if it does not exist? What if I am wrong? Then at least you will know you tried. At least you will not spend your life wondering what if. He reached across the table and took her hand, his touch warm and steady. Zara, I came to Concord on business and I planned to leave as soon as it was finished. But then I met you and everything changed. Her heart began to beat faster. What are you saying? I am saying that I have been all over this country. I have met hundreds of people in dozens of towns. But I have never met anyone like you. You are smart and strong and beautiful, and you believe in something bigger than just getting by. When I am with you, I feel like I could be more than just a trail hand. I feel like I could build something, have a real life. Zara felt tears prick at her eyes. Mason, you have known me for barely more than a week. I know, and maybe that sounds crazy, but I also know what I feel when I look at you. I know that I wake up thinking about seeing you and go to sleep remembering our conversations. I know that the thought of leaving Concord and never seeing you again makes me feel like someone is tearing out my heart. He squeezed her hand gently. I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I am just asking for a chance. Let me stay in Concord. Let me court you properly. Let me prove that what you have been dreaming of is real. A tear slipped down Zara's cheek. What about your work? You said you were a trail hand. I have been saving my money for years. I have enough to buy a small piece of land, maybe start a ranch of my own. I was waiting for the right place, the right reason. I think I just found both. That night after Mason left, Zara lay in her bed unable to sleep, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. Could it really be this simple? Could the man she had been waiting for have just walked into her store on an ordinary Monday afternoon? It seemed too perfect, too much like the stories she had been told were impossible, but the feeling in her chest when Mason held her hand had been real. The warmth in his eyes when he looked at her had been genuine, and the way he talked about the future, including her in his plans so naturally, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she had been right to wait. The next morning, Mason was at the store when she opened it, holding a bouquet of wildflowers he must have picked from the fields outside town. "For you," he said with a shy smile that made him look younger than his 26 years. Zara took the flowers, breathing in their sweet scent. "They are beautiful. Not as beautiful as you," she felt herself blushing. "You do not have to flatter me, Mason Vance. It is not flattery if it is true." He followed her into the store. "I spoke with the land agent this morning. There is a property about 3 miles from here, 40 acres with a creek running through it. The previous owner went back east and the land has been sitting empty. I am going to look at it this afternoon. Would you come with me?" The request was bold, asking her to spend the afternoon with him unchaperoned. The gossip it would generate would be considerable. Zara thought about it for approximately 3 seconds before nodding. "I would love to." They rode out to the property after lunch, Zara sitting sideways on Mason's horse, her arms around his waist as they traveled the dirt road out of town. She could feel the solid warmth of him, could smell the clean scent of soap and leather. Every moment felt charged with possibility. The land was beautiful, rolling hills covered in grass with a stand of trees near the creek. Mason helped Zara down from the horse, and they walked the property together, his hand finding hers as they explored. "I could build a house there," Mason said, pointing to a rise that overlooked the creek. "A barn over there for horses and cattle. There is good grazing land and the water is clear and clean." Zara could see it in her mind, could imagine the life that could be built here. "It is perfect." "You really think so?" He turned to face her, both of his hands holding both of hers now. "Because I am not just building a house, Zara. I am building a home, and I want to know if you can see yourself there. With me." She looked up at him, at this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to a prayer she had not quite known how to speak. "I can see it, but Mason, people will talk. They already think I am making a mistake. Let them talk. In a year, when we are happy and they can see what we have, they will change their minds. And if they do not, well, their opinions will not matter because we will have each other." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Zara felt something settle in her chest, a certainty she had never experienced before. This was right. This was what she had been waiting for. The courtship that followed was the subject of endless town gossip. Some people were scandalized by how quickly things were moving. Others were skeptical that a drifter cowboy could really be serious about settling down. But Mason ignored all of it, focused entirely on Zara and their future together. He bought the land and began building a house, working from dawn until dusk with a determination that impressed even his harshest critics. He was skilled with his hands, and the house took shape quickly, solid and well built. Other men from town, seeing the quality of his work, began to offer their help. Slowly, grudgingly, some of the townspeople began to accept that Mason Vance was here to stay. Zara continued running the general store, but now her days had new brightness to them. Mason would stop by in the mornings before heading out to his land, and in the evenings, they would have dinner together, sometimes at her place above the store, sometimes at the small hotel where he was staying until his house was finished. They talked about everything. Mason told her about growing up on a ranch in Kansas, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 18, about the years he had spent working cattle drives and saving every penny. Zara told him about her childhood in Concord, about the loneliness of growing up without a mother, about the books that had been her escape and her father who had encouraged her dreams. 3 months after Mason first walked into her store, the house on his property was finished. It was a simple structure, 2 stories with a wide porch and real glass windows, but to Zara, it looked like a palace. Mason took her out to see it on a Sunday afternoon, and as they stood on the porch looking out over the land, he got down on one knee. "Zara Daniels, you are the bravest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You dared to dream of something more, and somehow, impossibly, you gave me the chance to be part of that dream. Will you marry me? Will you make this house a home? Will you build a life with me?" She pulled him to his feet, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, yes, of course, yes. They were married a month later in the church in Concord. The ceremony was simple, but the church was full. Even some of the people who had mocked Zara the loudest came to the wedding, drawn by curiosity and perhaps a small hope that they had been wrong about her romantic notions. Thomas Pritchard did not attend, but his parents did, and Mrs. Pritchard even gave Zara a grudging nod of approval. "He seems like a good man," she said. "I hope you will be very happy." The wedding night felt like magic. Mason carried Zara over the threshold of their new home, and they spent the evening exploring their house and each other, learning the joy of belonging to someone completely. Zara had never felt so cherished, so desired, so absolutely sure that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Their first year of marriage was not easy, but it was good. Mason worked hard to establish his ranch, buying cattle and horses, building fences and barns, breaking land for crops. Zara continued to run the general store, though now she had help from a young woman named Sarah, whom she hired to manage the shop several days a week, giving Zara time to help Mason on the ranch. They learned each other's rhythms, the way Mason liked his coffee strong and black, the way Zara hummed when she cooked, the way they both reached for each other in sleep, always seeking connection even in unconsciousness. They had disagreements, of course, about money and time management, and whose turn it was to deal with the stubborn rooster that terrorized the chicken coop. But they learned to talk through their problems, to listen to each other, to compromise. The townspeople's attitudes shifted as they watched Zara and Mason build their life together. It became clear that this was not a fleeting infatuation but a genuine partnership built on love and respect. Even Mrs. Henderson, who had laughed the loudest at Zara's declaration about true love, stopped by the store one day with an apology. "I was wrong about you," she said, her face red with embarrassment. "You knew what you wanted and you waited for it. That takes courage. I am sorry I mocked you." Zara accepted the apology with grace, understanding that it was difficult for people to admit when they were wrong. She did not hold grudges. She was too happy to waste energy on old hurts. One evening in early spring, about 14 months after their wedding, Zara realized her monthly courses were late. She waited another week to be sure before telling Mason, and when she finally shared the news over dinner, his face lit up with a joy so pure it made her heart ache. "A baby," he whispered, as if saying it too loud might break the spell. "We are going to have a baby, we are," she laughed as he swept her into his arms, spinning her around the kitchen. "I am going to be a father. You are going to be a mother. We are going to be a family." He set her down gently, suddenly worried. "Should you be spinning? Is that safe? What do you need? Should you sit down, Mason? I am pregnant, not fragile. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine." But Mason insisted on treating her like spun glass for the next several months, taking over all the heavy work around the ranch and the store, bringing her tea and pillows, and whatever food she was craving at any given moment. Zara found his attentiveness both touching and occasionally annoying, but she loved him for his care even when she had to remind him she was still capable of walking upstairs by herself. The pregnancy was not easy. Zara suffered from severe morning sickness for the first few months and swelling ankles toward the end. But through it all, Mason was there, holding her hair when she was sick, rubbing her feet at night, reading to her from the novels they both loved when she was too tired to hold a book herself. On a cold November evening in 1878, with snow falling softly outside their bedroom window and the midwife coaching her through contractions, Zara gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him William after her father, and when Mason held his son for the first time, Zara saw tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Mason said in wonder. "You are perfect. I cannot believe how lucky I am." The early months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. William was a good baby, but he still woke frequently for feedings, and both Zara and Mason stumbled through those first weeks in a haze of sleeplessness and joy. They took turns walking the floor with him when he fussed, sang lullabies their own parents had sung to them, and marveled at every tiny sound and expression. Sarah took over running the general store almost entirely, with Zara stopping by occasionally to manage the books and make important decisions. It was strange to step back from something that had been such a central part of her life, but Zara found she did not miss it as much as she expected. Her priorities had shifted. She still loved the store, but her family came first now. As William grew from an infant into a chubby, happy toddler, the ranch prospered. Mason had a gift for horse breeding, and his animals quickly gained a reputation for being well-trained and reliable. People came from neighboring towns to buy his horses, and the income allowed them to expand the ranch and improve their home. On William's second birthday, as they celebrated with a small party attended by neighbors and friends from town, Zara stood on the porch watching Mason play with their son. William was laughing, his face covered in cake frosting as Mason pretended to be a horse and carried him around on his shoulders. Sarah came to stand beside Zara, following her gaze. "You were right, about waiting for true love." Zara turned to her friend in surprise. Sarah had become more than an employee over the years. She was one of Zara's closest friends, a quiet girl about 5 years younger who listened more than she spoke, but always seemed to understand what people needed. "You used to talk about it when I first started working at the store," Sarah continued. "About how you wanted what your parents had, about how you believed there was someone out there who would see you and love you for who you are. Everyone thought you were being foolish, but you were right. Look at what you have now." "I was lucky," Zara said. "Mason could have ridden right through Concord without stopping. Maybe you were brave enough to wait for what you wanted and the universe rewarded that bravery." Sarah smiled. "Either way, you have something special. Do not ever take it for granted." That night, after William was asleep in his small bed and the house was quiet, Zara and Mason sat together on their porch swing, wrapped in a thick quilt against the autumn chill. The stars were bright overhead, and the sound of crickets filled the air. "Do you remember the first time we met?" Zara asked, her head resting on Mason's shoulder. "Every detail. You looked so serious behind that counter, and when you smiled, it felt like the sun coming out from behind clouds." He kissed the top of her head. "I knew right then that I was in trouble. I knew you were going to change my life." "Did you really? Or are you just being romantic?" "I really did. I had this moment of clarity, like everything I had been doing, every trail I had ridden, every town I had passed through, it was all leading me to that store, to you." "I know that sounds foolish. It does not sound foolish at all. It sounds like destiny." Zara tilted her face up to kiss him. "I love you, Mason Vance. Thank you for making all my dreams come true. You made my dreams come true, Zara. I did not even know what I was missing until I found you. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me everything. They sat there in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the night sounds of their ranch. Inside the house, their son slept peacefully. In the barn, their horses moved quietly in their stalls. The land around them was theirs, built with their hands and their determination. It was a good life, better than either of them had imagined possible. 2 years later, Zara gave birth to twin girls, Alina and Emma. The pregnancy had been difficult, and the birth even more so, but both girls were healthy and strong, with their mother's dark hair and their father's brown eyes. William, now 4 years old, was fascinated by his baby sisters and appointed himself their protector, always wanting to hold them and help with their care. The house felt fuller with 3 children, louder and more chaotic, but also more joyful. Mason expanded the second floor, adding more bedrooms and a larger living space. They hired a young woman from town to help with the children and the housework, giving Zara time to occasionally work at the store and help Mason with ranch business. The years passed in a blur of childhood milestones and seasonal cycles. William learned to ride almost before he could walk properly, showing the same natural affinity for horses that his father had. Alina and Emma were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and developing their own twin language that baffled everyone else in the family. When the twins were 3 and William was 7, Zara realized she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the others, and she gave birth to another son, James, on a warm spring morning with birds singing outside the window. Mason held her hand through the whole thing, and when it was over and James was nursing peacefully, he looked at his wife with such love that it made her heart overflow. 4 children, he said in wonder. We have 4 beautiful, healthy children. How did we get so blessed? Hard work and good luck, Zara replied, exhausted but happy. And maybe a little bit of magic. Life settled into a new rhythm with 4 children. The ranch was thriving now, one of the most successful in the region. Mason had hired several ranch hands to help with the daily work, good men who respected him and were loyal to the family. Zara eventually sold the general store to Sarah, who had married a local carpenter and wanted to continue running the business. The sale gave them financial security and freed Zara to focus entirely on her family and the ranch. The children grew and changed. William became a serious, responsible boy who took his role as oldest sibling to heart. Alina developed a love of reading that rivaled her mother's, always with a book in hand. Emma was adventurous and bold, constantly climbing trees and exploring the creek. James was the baby, sweet-natured and affectionate, loved and spoiled by everyone in the family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Mason planned a surprise for Zara. He arranged for the children to stay with Sarah and her family for the weekend, and he took Zara back to the place where he had proposed, the ridge overlooking the creek on their property. But now, instead of empty land, there was a small gazebo he had built in secret with the help of his ranch hands. Inside the gazebo was a table set with china and silver, candles waiting to be lit, and a picnic basket filled with all of Zara's favorite foods. "Mason," she breathed, tears already forming in her eyes. "This is beautiful. You are beautiful." He led her into the gazebo and seated her at the table. "I wanted to do something special to show you how much these 10 years have meant to me. You took a chance on a drifter cowboy with nothing but dreams and determination. You built this life with me. You gave me children and love and a home. I want you to know that I do not take any of it for granted. Every single day, I wake up grateful that my horse threw that shoe in Concord, grateful that I walked into your store, grateful that you saw something in me worth loving." They ate dinner as the sun set, talking and laughing like they were young and courting again. After the meal, Mason took out his guitar, an instrument he had bought years ago, and taught himself to play on quiet evenings after the children were asleep. He played and sang for her, old songs and new ones, his voice rough but sincere. As full darkness fell and the stars came out, they danced in the gazebo to music only they could hear, swaying together to the rhythm of their heartbeats and the chirping of crickets. Zara felt the same flutter in her chest that she had felt the first time Mason kissed her, the same certainty that this was right, this was real, this was the love she had dreamed of. "I would do it all again," she said softly. "Every moment, every choice, every challenge. I would do it all again to end up right here with you." Mason held her closer. "So would I, 1,000 times over." The years continued to pass. The children grew into young adults, each following their own paths. William stayed on the ranch, working alongside his father and learning everything about breeding and training horses. He was 18 now, tall and strong, with Mason's quiet confidence and Zara's compassionate heart. The twins, at 15, were developing distinct personalities despite their physical similarity. Alina wanted to be a teacher, and Emma talked about traveling west, seeing the mountains and the ocean. James, at 12, was still figuring out his place in the world, trying on different interests like coats to see which one fit. The ranch had expanded significantly over the years. They now had over 200 acres, dozens of horses, a substantial herd of cattle, and a reputation that stretched across New England. Mason had become a respected figure in the community, known for his fair dealing and quality animals. Zara had started a small lending library in town, donating many of her own books and encouraging others to share their collections, promoting the reading and education she believed in so deeply. Their love had not dimmed with time or familiarity. They still sought each other out, still found joy in simple moments together. Mason still brought Zara wildflowers. She still made his favorite meals. They still danced in their kitchen when no one was watching and held hands when they walked their land together. One evening when Zara was 43 and Mason was 47, they sat together on their porch as they had done countless times before. William was in the barn finishing evening chores. The twins were in their room, Alina reading while Emma sketched pictures of horses. James was practicing his arithmetic at the kitchen table, his tongue sticking out slightly as he concentrated. "You ever think about that day in town?" Zara asked. "When I declared I would only marry for true love and everyone laughed." Mason reached for her hand. "I think about it often, actually. I think about how brave you were, how certain. I think about how easily we might have missed each other if you had given in to pressure and married someone else, or if I had ridden through without stopping. But you did stop, and I did wait. And look at what we found." She gestured at their home, their land, their life. "Everyone said I was chasing fairy tales. Maybe I was, but the thing about fairy tales is that sometimes they come true. Not sometimes. They came true for us because we made them come true. We chose each other every day. We worked for this. We built it together with our hands and our hearts." Mason squeezed her hand. "That is better than any fairy tale because it is real." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. From inside the house came the sound of their children, the daily music of their lives. The ranch spread out before them, a testament to their partnership and dedication. Everything they had dreamed of had come to pass and more. Years later, when their children had families of their own and the house was full of grandchildren during holidays, Zara would tell them the story of how she and Mason met. She would talk about believing in true love when no one else did, about waiting for something real, about the cowboy who walked into her store and changed everything. The grandchildren would listen with wide eyes, captivated by the romance of it all. And Zara would look across the room at Mason, silver-haired now but still strong, still steady, still the man who had made every dream come true, and she would smile because the story was not just a story. It was their life, every precious moment of it. William took over the ranch eventually, running it with the same integrity his father had shown. He married a kind woman from town named Clara, and they gave Mason and Zara their first grandchildren, a boy and a girl who loved visiting the ranch and hearing stories about the old days. Eleanor became a teacher as she had dreamed, running the school in Concord with patience and creativity. She married another teacher, and together they fostered a love of learning in hundreds of children. Emma did travel west, making it all the way to California before returning home with stories of mountains and deserts and the Pacific Ocean. She married a railroad engineer and split her time between adventure and family. James surprised everyone by becoming a veterinarian, the first in the family to attend university, but his love of animals and his gentle nature made it a perfect fit. Mason and Zara watched their children and grandchildren with pride and joy. They had given their children the security and love they deserved, had shown them through example what a good marriage looked like, had taught them to dream and work hard and never settle for less than what they truly wanted. On a warm summer evening when Zara was 62 and Mason was 66, they took a walk down to the creek as they often did, moving more slowly now but still hand in hand. They sat on the bank, their feet dangling in the cool water, and watched the sunset together. "I have been thinking about legacy," Mason said thoughtfully, "about what we leave behind when we are gone." "That is morbid talk for such a beautiful evening," Zara chided gently. "Not morbid, just practical. I am not planning on going anywhere for a long time yet, but I want you to know that I am satisfied. More than satisfied. I am deeply, profoundly grateful for every moment of this life we have built together. Our children are good people. Our grandchildren are healthy and loved. The ranch will continue on. But more than any of that, we loved each other well. We loved each other truly. That is the legacy I am most proud of." Zara felt tears prick her eyes. "I am proud of it too. You gave me everything I dreamed of and so much more. You made me believe in magic, Mason. Every single day with you has been a gift. Then we are even because you gave me the same." He kissed her softly, tenderly, with all the love of their decades together. "You were worth waiting for. This life was worth building. I would not change a single thing." As the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to appear, they sat together in peaceful contentment. Two people who had found what they were looking for and held on to it with both hands. Behind them, their house glowed with lamplight, filled with the evidence of their life together, photographs and furniture and the worn quilts Zara had made over the years. Around them, the land they had worked and loved stretched into the gathering darkness, fertile and productive and beautiful. The story the townspeople told about Zara changed over the years. She was no longer the foolish girl who believed in fairy tales. She became the woman who knew what she wanted and was brave enough to wait for it. She became proof that dreams could come true if you held onto them tightly enough and worked hard enough to make them real. Young women in town would ask her advice about marriage and love, and Zara always told them the same thing. Do not settle for someone who only sees what you can do for them. Wait for someone who sees who you are and loves you for it. Wait for someone who makes you want to be better, who supports your dreams, who shows up every day ready to build a life with you. That person exists, and they are worth waiting for." And then she would smile and think about a dusty cowboy walking into her store all those years ago. And she would know with absolute certainty that every word she said was true. Mason lived to be 73, still working the ranch alongside William, until a sudden heart attack took him quickly one autumn morning. He died doing what he loved, on the land he and Zara had built together. And though his passing left a hole in her heart that would never fully heal, Zara found comfort in the certainty that they had loved each other completely, that they had made the most of every day together. She lived another 8 years after Mason's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. She never remarried, never even considered it. Mason had been her true love, and she had been blessed to spend most of her life with him. That was more than enough. On the morning, Zara died peacefully in her sleep at the age of 79. Her family found her with a smile on her face, her hand resting on a photograph of Mason taken shortly after they married. The picture showed a young, handsome man with warm eyes and a confident smile, and everyone who looked at it could see the love in his expression. The way he looked at whoever was behind the camera, Zara herself, with absolute adoration. They buried her next to Mason on the ridge overlooking the creek, in the spot where he had built the gazebo all those years ago. The whole town came to the funeral, and many people spoke about Zara's kindness, her strength, her generosity, and her unwavering belief in the power of true love. But perhaps the most fitting tribute came from her oldest granddaughter, William and Clara's daughter Margaret, who stood at the graveside and told the story of how Zara and Mason met. She told it the way Zara had told it to her, with all the romance and hope and certainty that had defined their relationship. "My grandmother taught me that love is not just a feeling, it is a choice you make every day," Margaret said, her voice strong despite her tears. "She showed me that waiting for the right person is better than settling for the wrong one. She proved that fairy tales can come true if you are brave enough to believe in them and patient enough to wait for them. She and my grandfather built a legacy of love that will continue in all of us who knew them, who learned from them, who were blessed to witness the kind of partnership they shared." As the years passed and the ranch continued to thrive under William's management, and later under his children's, the story of Zara and Mason became family legend. New generations heard about the woman who dared to dream of true love and the cowboy who made every dream come real. They heard about the day in town when Zara declared she would only marry for love and everyone laughed, and how that same town eventually celebrated her golden wedding anniversary and mourned her passing. The house Mason built still stood, expanded and updated but fundamentally the same, solid and well-made like the love that had created it. The creek still ran clear and cold through the property. The land still prospered under the care of those who loved it. And somewhere in the great mystery beyond this life, two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful together, who had loved truly and deeply and completely, were together again, forever bound by the magic they had created and the dreams they had made real. The children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who came after carried forward the lessons Zara and Mason had taught through their example. They learned to value love over convenience, to wait for what truly mattered, to build relationships on respect and partnership and genuine affection. They learned that fairy tales could come true, not through magic or fate alone, but through courage and commitment and the willingness to work for what you wanted most. And so the legacy continued, spreading outward like ripples on water, touching lives and changing hearts, proving over and over that the woman who had been laughed at for dreaming of true love had been right all along. She had waited for something real, and when it came, She had recognized it and embraced it and built a life around it that would echo through generations. In the end, that was perhaps the greatest triumph of all. Not just that Zara found her true love, but that through finding it and living it and showing others what it looked like, she changed minds and opened hearts and made the world a little more believing in the possibility of magic. Because true love is magic. It is the best kind of magic, the kind that transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary memories, that turns strangers into soulmates, that builds houses into homes and creates families bound not just by blood, but by choice and commitment and unwavering devotion. Zara Daniels knew this truth from the beginning, held on to it when everyone told her she was wrong, and proved it through every year of her marriage to Mason Vance. And in doing so, she left behind something far more valuable than land or money or possessions. She left behind proof that dreams can come true, that love is worth waiting for, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the fairy tale ending you long for is exactly the ending you get.